My name is Crystal Kang Ahn. I am 30 years old. I was born in Los Angeles, California, but I moved up to the Bay Area when I was a few months old, and I've spent my entire life there. And I moved to Chicago about a year ago, and I identify as Korean American. I moved around the Bay Area, all over the Bay Area my entire life. I spent a good amount of time in San Jose, Fremont, more recently in Marin County. My dad was a Korean historian turned pastor and church planter. So I attended many different schools, about 10 different schools before middle school, and we moved around a lot. So I grew up all over the Bay Area. It wasn't easy. I think they say children are very resilient, and that's what my parents believed too, which is true, but I think a part of it's also because I didn't learn how to speak English until much later in life. I was born here, but I did 2 years of ESL. So I would say I wasn't fluent in English until about 4th grade. There was a lot of transition, a lot of moving pieces. My dad was in and out when I was younger. I was raised mostly by my grandmother. So my dad, being a Korean historian, he instilled a lot of patriotism in me. So from the time I was young, he had me commit to memory, like the three kingdoms. I would recite like 고구려, 백제, 신라, 통일신라, 조선, 일제시대, 대한민국, so on and so forth. And he would tell me about the printing press that Korea invented and how there's a lot of things in Korean history that were erased. So I just grew up with a lot of Korean pride and a lot of Korean patriotism. So for that reason, and having been raised by my grandmother, I didn't speak English for a long time. So I remember attending 3 different schools in kindergarten, 2 different schools in 1st grade, 3 different schools in 2nd grade. And they were in very different parts of California. So although it was all across state, Northern California, and even a little bit Southern California too, they were all very different. One of my earliest memories of when I realized, started to develop an awareness of my identity was in kindergarten, because I had a 23-year-old teacher and she broke down crying in class because she couldn't handle this foreign kid who didn't understand English. So she demanded that my parents bring on a professional Korean translator, which my parents were not willing to do. So my mom instead came to school with me for the rest of the school year, and she interpreted for me. It was embarrassing. I mean, it did make school a lot easier, but it was also embarrassing. And I remember hearing certain things from students because I couldn't speak English. One guy, he was repeating certain things over and over. And after a while, he said, "Are you deaf? Are you deaf?" And I remember thinking, what is deaf? And then I learned later. So just little things like that. So that wasn't easy because it was all white. I think they also didn't have the resources to help me. When I was in 2nd grade, we moved to a mostly all Black neighborhood. So that came with its own struggles too. I remember in 2nd grade, during arts and crafts time, there was a boy who threw scissors in the air and it like hit my forehead and it got stuck like this. But because it was a more underserved community, they didn't have the resources. The teacher was not in the classroom, so we had to go to the hospital. I had to get stitches and they moved me out of school. And I would say 3rd and 4th grade were really pivotal because that's when I moved to Fremont, California. And I moved to a neighborhood that was something like 70-80% Asian American. In Fremont, I was surrounded by a lot of different types of Asians, but predominantly Chinese Americans. So I kind of looked like everyone else, but my home experience was so different. And I wasn't like everyone else. So going to college and hanging out with a lot of Korean Americans, mostly 2nd gen or 1.5 gen, that was really affirming for me because things made sense. And we would hang out in Koreatown all the time. There are certain things that made sense because their upbringing was more similar to mine. I would say I am probably more of a late bloomer, and I attribute that to my father's family and his legacy to me. Because I was so strongly encultured in that there was no room to think otherwise. So in my college years, I delved, because my family was so Korean, but I didn't really have Korean peers, so that's something that I really went into in college. Like, I sought out Korean friends. I spent all my time in Korean organizations. So I felt like I had to go from one extreme to another in order to fully experience and delve into those different parts of my identity before finally syncretizing them or bringing them all together in a more holistic way. My parents, especially my father, is considered extremely conservative, even by Korean standards, by many Korean standards. I learned that most Korean Americans don't speak Korean the way I do, as much as I do, because I'm fluent in Korean and my dad drilled that into me. I still, when I listen to stories from my husband about how he grew up and all the more blatant racism that he went through, it's very eye-opening. And I do think our stories are interconnected. So the more that I hear his stories and other Korean American stories, the more I realize something about myself. So when I was born with a heart condition called a pulmonary artery sling. So basically my pulmonary artery was born wrapped around my trachea, and which is really rare. I just saw a cardiologist last week, and my pulmonary artery was also twisted and deformed. So it's a rare case, and in every instance, babies die without surgery. So I was supposed to get surgery for all intents and purposes. They didn't do surgery because my grandma, she stole me from the hospital, essentially. So according to my grandma, she prayed, she had a vision that no knife was to ever touch my body. She kidnapped me from the hospital. She went home, she ran home, she didn't speak any English, she turned off all the lights, she unplugged all the phones, she shut all the doors, and she just prayed with me. And she also initiated something called a 24-hour like a chain prayer from here to Korea. So if you think about it from today's day and age, it's super illegal, it's arguably unethical. What if something happens? It's a huge liability. But she took that risk. When I hear my grandparents and how they survived World War I, World War II, the Korean War, immigrating here, and when I envision my grandma lying to the doctors, they had an operation table ready for me. They had me strapped down. When they were out of the room, she unbuckled me, she threw me on her back. She told my grandfather, her husband, let's go home. So he drove home, he rushed home. And, she shut the doors, never contacted anybody. We got many phone calls during that time, but she didn't answer anything. She would just say, I don't speak English. So when I think of my grandma having stolen me from the hospital and done everything wrong according to the books, I can't help but to admire that. There was something that she very much believed in. She very much believed in it, and I do believe that she encountered something. During early elementary years, when I was with my grandma full time, and she's the one who would pick me up from school, who would help me with my homework, I remember feeling really loved and really secure during that time. And that was kind of the identity that I was given, that I'm a miracle baby, because I was supposed to get surgery and I didn't, and I kept surviving. And when I was 10, they took an MRI and they realized that I don't need surgery, that the artery, it lifted off of my breathing tube and it left enough space that I could breathe. So when I talked to my cardiologist last week, he says, that's impossible, that doesn't happen. And that's the story that I've heard from when I was young too. A lot of pediatric cardiologists would say, this doesn't happen. So hence the whole miracle baby narrative. And it wasn't until later that I started to delve more deeply into that, and I realized that there's resentment there too. Because I was a miracle baby, I couldn't mess up. Because I was a miracle baby, I was told I have the second life that God's given me, and I can't screw it up. And I am internally indebted to my parents, to God, to all the people that prayed for me. My grandmother passed away in 2013, and in a lot of ways, I know a lot of Korean kids do grow up with their grandmothers. And I would say in a lot of ways she was closer to my mother, so closer than my own mother was. And I felt like she knew me better than my own mother did in some ways. I think Miracle Baby still holds a lot of baggage for me, but I do think that all human beings are inherently valuable, that all human beings are inherently worthy of dignity, and there is something undeniably just really worthy about every single human being. And for me, I tell myself every day that it's not easy to overcome life obstacles. It's not easy to overcome circumstances. Even though I did grow up in the United States and I enjoy a lot of privileges, but there was a lot of work that I had to do in order to be where I am today. So that's something that, I don't know if I would use the word miraculous, but it's very close to it. I think for a long time I regretted not doing my absolute best, because I always thought, why am I this way? Why am I so behind? I also grew up bullied. What's wrong with me? I always felt very defective. So I had a lot of regrets in that way. If I were just better, if I were just smarter, if I were just more of what my parents wanted me to be, then maybe I wouldn't get this kind of feedback or that kind of feedback. But I would say today I try to embrace those things as things that were necessary for me to be where I am today. And if I do have any regrets, it would be not enjoying my time more and not appreciating the little moments more. My name is Crystal Kang Ahn, and this is my Korean American story.